All right. So, here we go. This is your first FinTech festival as MD. How's that feeling?
Very exciting. I think it's great to be part of this group. It's really good to be invigorated by the energy of the space, the energy of the people, the energy of the community here. They're all creators, innovators, founders, people, doing new things, exciting things. So it's really good to be part of this.
Yes. Actually, the new Prime Minister, not so new anymore, had come to the FinTech Festival some years ago and had described as it feeling like a rock concert. And it rather does. So thank you to Vanessa, who's our resident DJ. And it does feel really pumped and energized. Thinking of pumped and energized, there were lots of people who were flicking through phones, I noticed in the audience yesterday. And one of the reasons was, of course, they were following results coming from the US presidential election. Obviously, I'd like to get some of your reflections as we wake up this morning to President Trump in the US for the next 4 years.
Yeah, it was quite spectacular. The results were quite unambiguous, and I saw that the shift towards Trump was quite unambiguous across all the states practically, and across most demographic groups. So it's quite a clear result. I think it does reflect that certain issues are very important to the American voters. Certainly, I think the economy is top of mind, cost of living, state of the economy, immigration. These are very important issues to the American public. So I think what matters to all of us now is the direction of policies going from here. This has been well discussed. I think the markets already, have pretty much summed it up. What's been happening. We know that equity markets have been up at record highs or near record highs, and this reflects optimism around tax cuts, making them permanent, optimism around deregulation. But we also see that the dollar is high, and expectation, and of course the yield curve has steepened a little bit. So expectation about inflation remaining sticky because of policies having an inflationary bent is there, and so the dollar is high, yield curve is steeper, and Bitcoin is up, and we know why that is so. So it's part of the deregulatory sentiment. So I think all this is hugely important, whether some of these policies are how they're going to impact on growth and inflation. So for the global economy, potentially some of these policies can be restrictive on growth, particularly trade policies and inflationary. But we know that there are other policies that are pro-growth and potentially pro-supply side. So the tax cuts, if they invigorate more investment, if technology also invigorates more investment, these can be potentially helpful to productivity. So we'll have to see. The sequencing, I think, of the policies matter greatly. Some policies will have very near-term and quick impact, whilst other policies like deregulation and tax cuts may take time for investments to filter through to help with the supply side of the economy. So we are watching very closely. This matters greatly, not just for us, but everyone else.
Yes, it definitely seems very clear-cut. The House and the Senate as well, also going in the Republican direction, so there is that consistency. Okay, great. And I just want to say that Queen Maxima has joined us here in the front row. Thank you so much. If we could just give her a rousing welcome to the Singapore FinTech Festival. Thank you.
And Ravi as well, who was probably in this seat just last year.
And of course, you were having some conversations backstage, and that is a lot of what all of this is about. It's about partnerships, collaborations, and important conversations. Speaking of which, let's get to, I did a little bit of a Supnendu Mahanti there. I threw out my script, but let's go back to it. One of the things I want to talk to you about, of course, is MAS's overall vision for the fintech sector and the impact that all of the great changes are going to have on the delivery of financial services. Let's first of all get your thoughts on the overall vision.
Yeah, maybe I'll just speak around 3 words. Firstly, community. Secondly, collaboration. And third, about capabilities. Community, I think, this speaks for itself. This festival speaks for itself. 900 speakers, tens of thousands of participants. There's a very thriving community of fintech startups and firms in Singapore, and now all around the region coming together for this event. So this is one clear manifestation of this network and this community. Ravi announced the launch of the GFTN yesterday, and that signals a new level of ambition to widen, broaden, deepen this network globally, and therefore to pull these networks together. So I think that will be hugely beneficial for the ecosystem that we have here, and of course the community here at the FinTech Festival. So I think that signals a new level of ambition and achievement for community. So I think that's important. Two is collaboration. Now, we started the journey with encouraging experimentation and innovation through setting up sandboxes. And that was hugely beneficial, but you get to benefit with innovation one project at a time, right? So it's the impact is a little bit, shall we say, bespoke. So now we're thinking about how to multiply that and have that benefit at scale, right? So with now a different mode of collaboration, we're actively forming consortia with industry, with fellow regulators, policymakers, coming together to solve problems. So that's been most evident in several areas. I mean, certainly we've had this in the sustainability area. We've had this also in the digital assets area, which is currently where we're focusing a lot of our time. So industry consortia, over 20 financial institutions, also industry associations, standard setters, and international organizations, policymakers, all coming together, trying to solve problems for digital assets. We can talk about that more later. And also for AI. Also, it's been a collaborative approach with the industry to try to understand the risk better and then to start to identify the issues that everyone needs to solve in common. So that's been our approach, and I think that has been helpful in scaling the impact. Third, I'll just say capabilities. There are a couple of areas where we think that it's going to be hugely impactful, and we've focused our attention on those. And we're taking steps to put in place the building blocks to help the industry grow and overcome some of these challenges and pain points. So payments is one area. It's been a long-standing area over many years where we've been putting in place the building blocks to get this to work. The vision, of course, is low-cost, accessible, fast domestic payments, but also cross-border payments. So that's been a multi-year ambition and objective, and we're continuing to build on that. Tokens, the space of asset tokens is also something we're investing heavily on, trying to make progress in this together with the industry. AI as well, and we can talk about that later, and of course sustainability is the next area. And these are all multi-year efforts.
Yeah, well, let's dig deeper on some of those. And before we do, interestingly, you talked about the community and how important that was. If anyone sees Ravi Menon or anyone who is involved with GFTN, you will see them wearing a big round badge. And you educated me this morning that it's flags of the world, many of them. We joked about possibly more than the United Nations, but I think that underpins how important community is, a global community, right?
Yes. It's a badge of ambition on Ravi's chest as well as Sopnendu. So,
yes. Okay, so let's dig a little bit deeper. I want to talk about global payments. So particularly digital currencies, cross-border. Just when you think payments are fast, they get faster. There's another platform offering some form of added value. But I think it's important for us to understand how Singapore is going to remain competitive in a landscape that's so dynamic.
Yeah. So, Manisha, we've taken this quite a long way, right? It started with putting in place some of the basic building blocks, national digital identity, layering on that the fast payment rails, and then schemes that allow very easy lookup and also acceptance, so QR codes, pay now lookups, and so on, right? So it works very well. So I brought a slide to show you where we are with this. And so this is domestic payments, right? It looks like penetration is fantastic. Sign-ups are above 90%. Merchant, adoption of QR codes is, near 100%. So it looks to be near ubiquitous, right? It is ubiquitous, but it's not seamless. And the problem that now we need to solve is interoperability. So although a lot of people have onboarded these and can use a single QR code, but the point is that it is still, a merchant may not have onboarded different payment schemes. And so if I'm only on one payment scheme, then I can only accept customers from that one payment scheme. And what we want to do is make that interoperable. Because across payment schemes, we know that the penetration is near 100%. So if we can make that interoperable, then you can walk in with one payment scheme or two payment schemes, and you can pay at any merchant. So that's the vision, and we're trying to take steps towards that. And so what is happening now is that, so Nets Group and Liquid Group will be launching an interoperable QR payment solution. They're offering separate solutions. And so with this, merchants don't have to onboard very many different schemes for them to accept a wider base of customers. So that's the vision, to make it much more seamless. So that's on the domestic front. Cross-border has been a different challenge. We have started this journey doing cross-border linkages one at a time. The first one was with Thailand. You know, my esteemed colleague, Governor Setuprat, will be speaking next. And Thailand was our very first bilateral linkage between the fast payment systems of the two countries. And I think it took 2 years to get that done. So you can see that, and then of course now we've got several bilateral linkages with Malaysia and with India and so on. But it takes time to build this out and resources. So what I think we've embarked on, the ASEAN countries, together with the BIS Innovation Hub, is to work on scaling this in a multilateral way. And this is called Project Nexus, and we think it's a game changer because it's a central switch and it's a central framework of standards, a single framework of standards, so that you don't have to form bilateral linkages. Everyone just connects to the central switch and the single framework. And then you can have access to the whole network. So I think that's a massive game changer. It will connect up our region quickly, and it can also be the node to connect into other networks in other regions. So this, I think, has the potential to transform cross-border payments and make it much more accessible in a low-cost, fast way. So that's the vision. I have a slide on this as well that shows where these some of the bilateral linkages are currently. But with Nexus, you know, we can widen the network extensively and reach other regions as well. So that's on payments, and that's where we are.
Okay, excellent. And I suppose it helps that you already have that existing infrastructure, that sort of multilateral infrastructure to build on. Okay, let's move on to a report that was produced by McKinsey. And this is about the tokenized market. Now, in this report, we learn that the total tokenized market capitalization is expected to reach $2 trillion by 2030. So then the question is, what is MAS's vision for tokenization, and what strategic developments can the market expect by that time?
I was just reminded that I neglected to mention one thing about Nexus. So it was just announced yesterday by the BIS that the scheme organization for Nexus will be set up in Singapore. So there's a lot of work to be done, and we're happy to host the scheme organization for Nexus, and we hope to drive that network and make it pervasive. Now, turning to asset tokenization. The potential is there. I think everyone sees the potential. And in Project Guardian, where we've worked with a variety of global financial institutions, also those in Singapore, they've experimented and piloted across different kinds of assets, and they've tokenized them, they've settled them, they've exchanged them across fixed income, FX, funds, and so on. They know that it works. And the economic benefits are also clear to all the participants, right? It's going to cut intermediation, cut costs, cut speed. Sorry, not cut speed, increase speed, but cut time. And so and the use cases are also very clear across multi-currency payment settlement, treasury management, collateral management, and of course, security settlement, right? So the use cases are also quite clear. So the challenge is how to get to that potential. And again, this is our collaborative approach with the industry, and there's an industry consortium, there's Project Guardian, there's also Global Layer 1, I'll come to that. And the idea is, tell us what are the problems that need to be solved in order to scale this, to get this to commercial scale. And so we've been taking these real pain points, real issues that the industry tells us need to be solved. And that's where we've focused our attention on how to solve them. So if I brought a slide to illustrate this. And so we have to think about the problem at 3 layers. First is at the token layer, where you can represent any asset, right? You can represent fixed income, you can represent FX, you can represent a fund, you can represent security, any asset as a token. But in order to have this exchange, what I call a fixed income token, what are the data and the attributes it should embody should be recognizable to you when I exchange it with you, so that we both agree that this is a fixed income token, and we agree that it has the attributes that I wish to sell to you and you wish to buy. So that requires work. And so industry frameworks and standards are needed so that we achieve this degree of harmonization and understanding and recognition for exchange. So we've done some of that work already, and the first publications have come out, frameworks for fixed income and framework for fund tokens. But more work remains ahead. So that's critical work. And then at the second layer is at the settlement layer, that when we exchange tokens, we won't exchange a fixed income token for a fund token directly. We will have to intermediate this through a form of digital money that's on-chain. So a high-quality settlement asset. So I think people will talk about, this could be central bank digital currency, it could be tokenized bank deposits backed by the balance sheet of a bank, or it could be a stable coin. So that's the next area that we have to work on to ensure that we do put in high-quality settlement assets into this ecosystem. So we're making a contribution by having set up a stablecoin regulatory framework, describing the attributes of what a well-regulated, sound stablecoin looks like and should have these attributes. And we are inviting people to make use of this and issue stablecoins that are compliant with this regulation. There's a lot of interest in this. The regulatory attributes are finalized, and we're now working on the legislation. So it's not quite ready, but we're having conversations already with issuers. And then last is at the infrastructure layer, the chain layer. Here is a little bit of an unregulated space today. And so what the industry participants tell us is they need more out of this. Firstly, it needs to be interoperable. So if networks set up around chains, and there are public chains available today that many will use, but they need to be interoperable across networks and potentially across different chains as well, so that the tokens and the liquidity around the tokens are not fragmented, so it can be connected up. And second, that this infrastructure has to be compatible with compliance, enabling these tokens and the participants around them to comply with laws and regulations. So that's hugely critical to make this programmable and compliance by design. And so that's where Global Layer 1 is another industry consortium that is set up with a core group of global banks, also market infrastructure providers coming in, working on these problems, trying to solve them. So these are the things that we're working on. We're very excited about the promise in asset tokenization, and these are steps we're actively taking.
Yeah, it's interesting actually that was a bit of a theme yesterday as well. You talked about harmonization. Sometimes on this stage we can have very abstract conversations, and part of your mission is to make sure that you bring all of those abstract conversations into a real world practicality. And I can understand the challenges around that. Speaking of which, let's talk about generative AI. This has been a huge talking point. And this is a technology that can significantly impact businesses and therefore the world. So the obvious question really is around how MAS is going to be able to navigate that, and also what are your thoughts actually? I was going to ask how are you managing, because you can't really, but what are your thoughts on the expectations of financial institutions when it comes to how they're expected to use Gen AI?
Yeah, so I think we're walking in step with each other. I won't say that, I mean, clearly I think the issue is you don't want them to get too far ahead of the regulator, but you don't want the regulator to get too far ahead of the industry either, in the sense of coming in too early with regulation that is not quite mature and not quite fully considered. So I think we've been taking these cautious steps, and again, it's been a collaborative approach that we're taking. The first thing that we did with Gen AI and AI is not to come in with regulation, but to set up industry consortia again. So the focus and the purpose is to build up capabilities both in industry and in the regulator. So that's really important. So the AI journey, of course, is not new. So it's probably at least 10 years in the making. What is new is Gen AI, but the financial industry is very familiar with AI, traditional machine learning based ones. And they've developed good processes and governance around how to manage AI. So the trick now is with Gen AI, what is the delta, what is new, what needs to be done about it. So the first step was to set up a consortia, we call it Project Mindforge, get industry together, sit down with us, and then we work through what are the risks here. So we look through the whole life cycle of this, from data collection, data processing, governance, down to model development, deployment, monitoring, performance, and so on. What are the risks around the whole life cycle of that? Can we come together and agree on a common taxonomy and inventory of these risks so that we have a common language to engage each other on? So that was the very first step. And so that resulted in a publication, and we've done that. And we did identify some of the additional risks in Gen AI. I mean, we all know about around the greater difficulty in terms of explainability and verification for Gen AI. We know the issues around hallucination accuracy. And we know some of the risks around prompt injection attacks, for instance, data leakage, and so on. So these are additional risks that have to be taken into account. So then the next stage we're working now with the industry consortia is knowing the risks, what does this mean for governance? And so that's what we aim to do now, and the next stage is to publish some good practices in the area of governance around the use of Gen AI. Then on the regulatory front, we started a step later, but now the process is in train, and we're working towards a set of guidance on model risk management. Covering both the data as well as the model development and subsequently the model deployment and monitoring work that has to be done to use this well, use this sustainably, and use this responsibly.
Okay. Still a lot of development and evolution, though, to go on there. So that feedback loop, I would guess, is very important. And the kind of feedback that you'll get at events like this as well will be, I think, feeding into that conversation a little bit further. I think we're going to speak about that, I'm sure, or you will speak about it many times in many panels in the coming years. Let's move on to previous years, because you have had experience at the Ministry of what was then the Ministry of Environment and Water, but now essentially a Ministry of Sustainability and the Environment, and sustainability is at something that is very close to all of our hearts here in Asia. We only have to turn on the news every day to see the impact that climate change is having on our world, and it's very close by with our neighboring countries, those in those multilateral groups that you talked about. And we've seen recent typhoons, this kind of thing. So it's very present in people's minds. But to get behind the kind of innovation and changes we need to see, we need sustainable finance. So I wanted to get some of your reflections on really where you sit in terms of what is required, MAS's role, what is the transformative role, do you think, of sustainable finance? And again, how is Singapore putting itself at the center of that conversation?
Yeah, so it's a critical question for all of us. It's an area where I think we have to remain hopeful and we have to remain committed. There will be ups and downs with this, and we'll have to see the trajectory of global policy on this. But clearly, I think momentum on the side of corporates and financial institutions remains on track. I think the momentum on the side of investors also remains broadly on track. So we've seen, for instance, sustainable funds inflows continuing to grow, certainly so in the last year. growing quite healthily around the 10% level. We're still seeing demand for sustainable loans and bonds growing, so I think that's also positive. And we're seeing also policy directions still trending in the right direction. So suddenly, for instance, Singapore has announced its intention to raise the carbon tax over several years. And other countries in this region have also mentioned an intention to introduce carbon taxes. So these are all trending in the right direction. I think we'll have to keep the momentum there. In terms of how the private sector and the financial community needs to work at this, I think we'll have to think about it in a few levels. One is that the capabilities need to be continually developed. We don't want capabilities to be a bottleneck. So one of the first things that we have done is to study the skills that are required in this area, so that when you do your loans and your bonds and you're providing the financial services across the board, you're able to have that layer of expertise that allows you to do so and to advise clients, whether they're corporates or investors, how to do so sustainably. So we've identified the skills that are needed, and there's now an initiative with the whole industry to really roll out the training that's needed to upskill the financial sector professionals so that they're able to do all the structuring. So that's the first thing. And it'll take the next couple of years to get this fully done. But there's already a great deal of structuring expertise here, so I think we're in good lead, and that they're providing a lot of this into the region. I think the second thing is that I think we've got to keep the momentum going through some regulatory actions. So certainly mandated climate disclosures will be part of it. They won't reach all corners of the economy quickly enough. I think that's the main issue. It'll always start, mandated climate disclosures will always start with the largest companies, the listed companies, and it will take time to filter through the supply chain down to the smallest companies. And so it'll be some years away, but necessary to start this journey and keep the momentum of it. Then on the financial institution side, it's also important for them to start the journey in terms of building a capability in terms of how to engage their financing chain, not just the supply chain, but across all customers. And the way we prompt their thinking is to ask them to undertake transition planning, that they should all get started on this journey. We're not telling them the ambition level they should set. That's for them to consider. But really start the journey, build up the capabilities, have these conversations with your supply chain, with your financing chain. How are you decarbonizing? And what are the pathways? So that's an important step to take. So coming back to this point about disclosures and that it's not going to permeate every corner of the economy very quickly, there is a residual data gap that is a huge issue. So banks would have difficulty engaging their customers. The customers have difficulty engaging their supply chains in terms of gathering all of that data. And so it is an issue, and I think it is something that we all have to apply our minds to. I think the community here will be very helpful if they could apply their minds to this and find models to do this. So MAS and GFTN has made a small contribution in this area. We've talked about this before with Launch Greenprint, but it's an attempt to simplify, automate this data collection, enable even small companies to be able to start this journey of gathering data on their climate exposures and reporting them in a simple way, automated way. But we need more help in this.
Yes, they need more help with this. So the feedback loop, it's great if everybody contributes. We don't have much time left, so I just wanted to finish on one quick little question out of left field that I think you might enjoy. So I had a question about quantum, but we won't have time to cover it. I want to just put a question to the audience. Raise your hand if you think you know what quantum is all about. Like literally 2 or 3 hands go up. Thank you to those of you. I think what it underlines is either you're too shy to raise your hand, or it is an acknowledgement that we still have so much to learn. Okay, there are lots of subjects that come up at SFF every year, which are a learning journey. While you are here, MD, what would you most like to learn at this year's festival?
I've arranged to do a walk around after our sessions today. We're staying, of course, for Governor Setupat and Queen Maxima's session, but I want to get a good feel about what the latest ideas are. and what people are seeing and pushing and dreaming of. So I think that's important. I don't have a particular area that I'm going to look. I'm going to be very open-minded. I'm here to learn and absorb.
That's great.
But I'll just leave one word about quantum, because
great.
I think it's not too early. I think that's the thing that most people have on their minds, because quantum computers are still in the lab. Let's be very clear about this. They're still in the lab. They're not at commercial grade and scale. But is it too early? No, it's not too early, especially on the security front. So we have been warned about hackers already doing harvesting of data so that they can break it later when quantum technology is fully available. So it's not too early. We have to look into security, post-quantum encryption, as well as quantum key distribution. MES is experimenting with those. But also in terms of use cases, quantum is going to give you that compute power that is, just exponentially greater than classical computers. And so it's not too early to think about how potential use cases could be there. It's not there yet, but useful to start the journey.
Well, if you want the resources to learn about quantum, this is the place to do it. We've got various stages where you can do all of it. But in the meantime, MD, I just want to say thank you so much. I know you've got a full slate and that you're going to be meeting lots of people today, but it was great to have this conversation with you and in a sense, introduce you to everyone here at the Singapore FinTech Festival. So please, let's show our appreciation.
And thanks very much, Manisha. It was a great chat. Thank you.